his 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Look, drug cartels and criminal organizations, including those from Mexico, Cuba, and China, are illegally cultivating marijuana across the United States. They are often disguise their illegal operations by hiding in states where law-abiding growers operate. But these illegal marijuana grows are dangerous. They rely on human trafficking for cheap labor and sexual exploitation. They steal water and energy from surrounding communities. They sow the grounds with pesticides and chemicals that seep or run off into our water. And they spray the marijuana with chemicals that end up being consumed by people here in the United States. Mr. Urben, how should the federal government respond to illegal marijuana cultivation, especially when it comes to combating international criminal organizations that are operating across the United States? What does a whole of government approach looks like from your experience?
So from my experience, sir, I mean, you laid out all the variety of crimes and activity that was taking place in these cultivation areas. I think it's very simply, we need to mandate a solution from the federal government. We need to provide the funding, for example, Mr. Anderson in Oklahoma. What I would suggest is we need to target the network and defeat the whole network. So you can use Chinese organized crime as an example, but you could also lay other organized crime elements in this, but we'll stick with Chinese organized crime right now. Federal funding, a task force that would target that entire network operating in the United States abroad. The funding is expensive for personnel and overtime, as Mr. Anderson would probably attest to. There's air and land assets that you need, but we need a federal task force comprised of DEA, HSI, FBI to include their counterintelligence side, because there is an counterintelligence component to this. IRS, Fish and Wildlife, and then again, successes that we've had in the past, partnering with state and locals who have the expertise and intelligence and know-how on the ground and using their authorities. It's a national security issue. The task force funding would employ essentially a platform of these federal agencies combined with subject matter experts, translators of various Chinese dialects in this example, data scientists and targeters, funding to recruit confidential sources, and also coordination with state and local prosecutors. The mandated task force would target them with federal prosecutors as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Urben. The Chinese have become the dominant players in illegal marijuana cultivation. But they are not the only players. How do we make sure the federal government is able to help state, local, tribal, and territorial law enforcement combat the big guys, the Chinese criminal organizations, as well as the smaller players? Look, in Michigan, earlier this week, a 50-year-old man was arraigned on charges of tax evasion related to an illegal marijuana grow operation that he ran for 2 years. When his home was searched, police found more than 1,000 marijuana plants and 50 pounds of processed marijuana. Just 2 months ago, Michigan State Police seized more than 10 million worth of marijuana at an illegal marijuana grow operation. That grow operation was in a 17,000 square foot warehouse situated on 19 acres. And in June, 4 Chinese nationals were arrested in Michigan for growing $5 million worth of illegal marijuana. Mr. Urben, clearly illegal marijuana grow operations are profitable business, and they are hidden in plain sight. What obstacles do federal, state, and local law enforcement face when trying to combat illegal marijuana grows? What can Congress do to help find, prosecute these farms and those who operate them?
So great question, and continuing on from the first question, the establishment of this task force would be paralleled by federal and state prosecutors that would utilize, like I mentioned earlier, the racketeering, continuing criminal enterprise, and money laundering laws to target command and control leadership at the highest levels in terms of the organized crime groups, the Chinese operating in this area. The task force would also have tactical ability to move from state to state and enforce the law.
Thank you, Mr. Urban. My time is up, and Chairman, I yield back.
The gentleman yields. I now recognize Ms. Green from Georgia for her 5 minutes of questioning.
Before